Good morning and welcome to those of us on Zoom and those watching YouTube. Today is Remembrance Sunday. This year finds us in a very different circumstance as we enter this remembrance time. This service hopefully is going to give us an opportunity to reflect and remember through pictures and words from the members of our congregation and community. Remembrance honours those who have served to defend our democratic freedoms and way of life. We unite across faiths and cultures and backgrounds to remember the service and sacrifice of the armed forces community from Britain and the Commonwealth. We will remember them. We pay tribute to the special contributions of families of the emergency services. We acknowledge innocent civilians who have lost their lives in conflict and acts of terrorism. Remembrance does not glorify war and its symbol. The red poppy is a sign of both remembrance and hope for a peaceful future. Wearing a poppy is never compulsory, but is greatly appreciated by those who intend to support. When and how you choose to wear a poppy is a reflection of your individual experiences and personal memories. Remembrance unites people of all faiths, cultures and backgrounds, but it is also deeply personal. This could mean wearing a poppy in November, before Remembrance Sunday. It could mean joining with others in your community on a commemorative anniversary. Or it could mean taking a moment on your own to pause and reflect. Everyone is free to remember in their own way. In every act of remembrance, we honour the memory of the fallen and pledge to care for the living. We will remember them. The Not Forgotten charity is celebrating 100 years this year and is still going strong. Since Martha Cunningham founded the charity in 1920, to which Princess Anne is now the patron, they have endeavoured to remain true to the original principles. They combat isolation and loneliness amongst vulnerable members of the armed forces community. The Not Forgotten may be 100, but they have continually adapted to meet the needs of their beneficiary base, including the recent coronavirus pandemic. We also could not achieve all we do without the support of other military charities and associations, both big and small, whose work we aim to complement, not duplicate. 18,000 charities were set up as a result of the First World War. Today, only 10 of them remain. The Not Forgotten is one of them, and whilst we're still needed, we are not going anywhere. Let us pray together this morning as we remember. Help us to lift our eyes above the torment of this broken world and grant us the grace to pray for those who wish us harm. We honour the past. May we put our faith in your future, for you are the source of life and hope, now and forever. Amen.
Rise up and follow thee. the strain and stress, and let our ordered lives confess the beauty of thy peace, the beauty of thy peace. Breathe through the heat of our desire, thy coolness and thy balm. Let sense be dumb, let flesh retire, speak through the earthquake, wind and fire. Oh, still small voice of calm, oh, still small voice of calm.
My name's Mike. On this Remembrance Sunday, I would normally be joining with others either in church or at the War Memorial in Wareham. Due to the coronavirus lockdown, that is not possible. I would like to tell you why I think it's very important to remember those who gave their lives in the service of their country in 2 world wars and many other smaller conflicts. These were mostly men, but some were women, who were called up by the government to protect the country they loved from those who wished to impose their rule upon us. We must never forget the sacrifice that was made by these ordinary people, clerks, farmers, shopkeepers, bus drivers and factory workers. If we do forget, we risk losing the peace, freedom and democracy that we enjoy in our country today, and those sacrifices would have been in vain.
I see you are wearing your medals. What were they awarded for?
Well, this one is the Suez Canal Crisis Commemorative Medal. Britain and France had run the canal successfully for nearly 100 years, but in 1956, President Nasser of Egypt, without negotiation, threatened to throw us out and nationalise the canal. Britain sent the Royal Navy detachment to ensure the free movement of traffic through the canal. President Nasser sunk derelict ships to block the canal, creating a confrontation whereby we went to war with Egypt. As it happens, a school friend of mine was killed as he parachuted into Port Said during that conflict. This other one is the General Service Medal with the Malay Peninsula clasp. In 1963, when the Federation of Malaysia was formed, President Sukarno of Indonesia thought it might be a threat to the economic and political stability of his country. With the backing of the communists, he began an insurgency into Malaysia, attacking strategic targets like pipelines and power stations. Britain, having made a treaty with Malaysia, dispatched forces to combat this threat. My ship patrolled the Malacca Straits, apprehending insurgents, gun runners and pirates.
This year, as a family, we were very proud to see Ella, in the first instance, nominated by her commanding officer within the Air Cadets to be one of the 2 Lord Lieutenants of Dorset representatives from the Air Cadet. And even prouder when she was chosen from all the other nominations from each of the Air Cadet detachments across Dorset. COVID-19 may have unfortunately thwarted many of the opportunities this year that Ella would have been able to represent the Air Cadets on behalf of the Lord Lieutenant at ceremonial events, but the award represents Ella's achievements and commitment to her role within the forces, every day making us proud.
Hi, this is John. I sent 3 pictures across, which hopefully you'll be looking at now for the Remembrance service. The first picture is of my mum, who joined the Women's Royal Naval Service, who I think were affectionately called the Wrens, and she served during the war, not a million miles from Wareham, because she was over in the Fleet Air Arm at near Yeovil. And I think she just sort of performed general duties, maintenance on aircraft and other equipment, and would do things like remove the chocks, for instance, when the planes were about to take off. Those are the kind of few stories that I managed to elicit from my mum. Now my dad, you can see there hopefully, and his medals. He served in Burma. I think he joined up when he was 18 and was posted across there. He was a signalman, which I guess meant his job was to cart a kind of radio around. You know, Burma, as I would think most people might know, was a particularly unpleasant place to be. Not only because, you know, it was part of the war, but I think the actual environment itself was pretty harrowing environment. I think a lot of soldiers out there, you know, contracted malaria and, you know, suffered or died of disease as much as they did from fighting the Japanese. But that's where my dad was. Again, like many men, he would never really talk about his experiences over there. The 3 medals that he received, that again you might see in front of you, were again a generic, I think, medal for that all servicemen in the Second World War received. I think the middle one on the sort of set of 3 that you've got there is pertaining to his sort of time in India, which was, you know, the gateway, if you like, into Burma, and then you've got the Burma Star there. So, you know, that's what my mum and dad were getting up to during the Second World War. So, you know, we remember them.
Remembrance Day has always been a particularly important time of the year for me. My father served in the army for 25 years as a physical training instructor. He loved army life. My childhood was full of army stories, although little was said about the actual war. Andre and I once took him back to Scotland to visit the house where he trained the commandos for the D-Day landings. It was a family tradition to always watch the Festival of Remembrance at the Royal Albert Hall. In 1988, as my dad watched the service, my mum collapsed in the kitchen and by the Monday had died from a cerebral hemorrhage. This was a very sad time for us as a family. 3 years after losing my mum, my dad decided to live in the Chelsea pensioners. We were very proud of him in his scarlet uniform. Lisa and I were delighted to get into the Chelsea Flower Show a day early one year on his free tickets. He always remained very fit, still doing press-ups in his small room into his 80s. He spent 10 years there and was well cared for. He still spent a lot of time with us in Swanage and was very popular with all our hotel guests. Remembrance Day is a significant time in my life to remember all those who lost their lives in conflict. But on a personal level, it is always a special time to remember my mum and dad.
Hi, I've been asked as a veteran what Remembrance Day means to me. I've thought about this all day. It's actually quite complex, really. My grandfather was in the D-Day landings as well as in Dunkirk, and I always remember being told stories about him when I was young. I joined the military when I was 17. I did 23 years in the Air Force. I served all sorts of places, really, but memorable, I suppose, in the ways of remembrances. I was in Northern Ireland for a long time doing close protection duties. I was also in Kosovo and did a couple of ins and outs during the first Gulf War. Very luckily, I never had to do Afghanistan. I'd already left by then. So yes, I've got a couple of medals to say that I've done something special. Me and Debbie spoke about this a few times, and I don't consider myself to be anything other than somebody who served. Most military people I know feel the same way and feel that their contribution has never been enough and will never match up to like my grandfather, who fought his way through the Second World War. So in regard to Remembrance Sunday, for me it's an honour to be able to stand there and to think about the people who've fallen, think about my comrades who've I fought alongside or I've served alongside. There's definitely a bond that you don't get in any other job or anything else. I've been a nurse now for almost the same time as I was in the military, and never quite got that bond the same, if I'm honest and truthful. So Remembrance Sunday, yeah, it is important to me. I do think about the people who we have to thank for their contribution in 2 world wars. But to me, more the more modern conflicts that we've been involved with, the Falklands and Kosovo and all the places in Yugoslavia, as well as sort of the Gulf Wars and in Afghanistan. To me, they're more real, and I suppose I can associate with them more, having served as I have. But it is a special time. It is a time to remember and to think about those people and to say thank you more than anything, because without them, I wouldn't have been allowed to have the peaceful 23 years of military life that I had, because I think things would have been very different. And although we discussed the Cold War, it was only that, it was a Cold War, there was no real conflict. And Kosovo, very different really. We were just looking after ourselves to make sure we didn't get shot at. And in Northern Ireland, well, unfortunately it was a bit of a civil war, and I think an awful lot of people couldn't really work out why we're there and what we're doing with our own people. But unfortunately I have lost friends in Kosovo. I lost friends in Northern Ireland as well as in Afghanistan. So I do think about them, and it is a time when those memories come back and what your memories of them are and how important they are. So for me, to sum up, it is an important time of the year. I do like to be part of it, and I'll certainly be doing my 2-minute silence. I know Oliver's quite proud of the fact that I served, and he always does his a little bit for it as well. It's a pity this year we can't do more than what we're doing.
Wareham Cemetery contains 49 First World War burials and 15 from the Second World War, 5 of those being unidentified. The cemetery also contains 12 German burials, again 1 being unidentified airman. At the time of the outbreak of war, Wareham was a small town of just over 2,000 people. The town was transformed during the war by the huge military camp built on the outskirts of the town, on both sides of Walgett Road. It was known as Wareham Camp or Walgett Camp. Military training for units of the Territorial Army had taken place in the Wareham area for more than 50 years because of the wide open space and easy access by train. These camps were tented and temporary. The wartime Wareham camp was built of wooden huts and existed for about 8 years. Wareham was chosen as a site of a major camp in early September 1914, a month after Britain declared war on Germany. It was to be used as a base for training new recruits. The first arrivals were volunteers from Yorkshire who had responded to Lord Kitchener's famous call to sign up, your country needs you. 600 men arrived by train in Wareham. By December 1914, the tents had been replaced by wooden huts. The camp included a hospital with 185 beds, a cinema, which was used as a church on Sundays, and a YMCA, a Young Men's Christian Association clubhouse. Sewage works and stables for the horses were also constructed, and the camp was one of the largest in Dorset, and it was described as the finest in England. The men were trained in trench warfare at Seven Barrows Farm, north of the town, and at Gallows Hill, near Beer Regis. Horse riding skills, including driving wagons, because motor transport hardly existed, bridge building on the rivers, and, of course, marching. The camp closed in around 1922.
The poppy is a symbol of remembrance and hope, including hope for a positive future and a peaceful world. They are a show of support for the armed forces community, those currently serving, ex-personnel and their families, a symbol of remembrance for all who have fallen in conflict.
Of
Being a cadet in the RAF has given me many experiences that I would not have gained anywhere else in my teenage years. I am very proud to have had a great-grandfather who served in the war, which has allowed us the freedom we experience now. We will remember them on this Remembrance Sunday. They shall not grow old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them. When you go home, tell them of us and say, for your tomorrow, we gave our today.